How do you describe what you do for people?
It's kind of changed as my business has evolved. My business is called Integrated Training, so it's an integrated approach to sustainable peak performance. But I guess at the essence of my training is mental skill development. But taking a step back from that, it's being able to get on the same level as people, understanding where they've come from and meeting them where they're at now, and having an understanding of what they need in order to progress their physical and mental health. And that is that's a skill that I don't think, like, that comes from my practical experiences of the world and having gone through the fire and understanding human behavior based on 13 years of working as an intensive care paramedic, where you're exposed to thousands of different presentations and understanding how these body systems are so intrinsically linked. And I love working around like energy control, more, giving people more self-awareness. I do a lot of work around breath control. I look at these things as like the foundations of performance. And I was just chatting to you before, but when I came into, my background is in health science, professional ocean lifeguard, intensive care paramedic. I brought that knowledge over into where I am now, which is working with anyone who wants to optimize health and performance. And a big part of that is working with elite level athletes. And so my background isn't in sporting performance. So when I came into this environment, I thought that these things like breath work, mind-body practices, meditation, sleep hygiene, all the stuff I thought would be like the foundations of performance. And I realized that these, what I thought were the foundations, were the biggest things that were missing. And, you can build a beautiful house on top of shitty foundations, but the cracks will start appearing. And that's what I was starting to see in these athletes who get to the very top and the cracks start appearing. And then the idea of going back and getting the foundations right just isn't on their radar. What do? You add more load. The problem is the load is what has caused the imbalance. And so, yeah.
It always does blow my mind how many elite athletes don't tick some of these what are fairly simple boxes, and it's always astounding of how it's always a measure of like how they've got to where they've got to. Like there's something else that's driven them there, that's got them there, but then how much they've kind of left at the door and not brought with them in terms of how much further they can go. And I guess that links in with what you're talking about, how you can have sustained peak performance. So what is your idea of sustainable peak performance?
Yeah. Firstly, just touching on that, like how many athletes are actually elite? Most of them are operating at about 50 to 60% of their capacity, right? Like an example would be if you're not training your breathing system, you're not looking for 1%. This is a body system that is linked to every other body system, in that when you optimize it, it improves your cardiovascular capacity, it improves your recovery, improves nervous system regulation. And then you talked about, there's something driving them. I think with like people that perform at a really high level, there's three things. There's some sort of trauma that they've been through, or experience, or stress, life stuff that's pushing them from behind. They then have a clear destination, a purpose, and they're able to be present and have focus on what they're doing. I think those three things are like important for, and often like working with athletes and going in, and it's like, right, there's this thing, which is the thing pushing them, that we need to sort out. The thing is, like, if you sort that thing out, it might take their drive away. And so you have to be careful with that. And sustainable peak performance is about, I guess it's about balancing high productivity with self-care and resilience. And the key here, peak performance is just doing something to the highest of your physical and mental capability. We can all do that. Sustainable peak performance is doing it for the next 5, 10, 15 years without getting burnt out, without affecting your close relationships, without, and that's the key thing there is getting that balance right between stress and recovery, prioritizing your sleep, nutrition, mind-body practices, getting in nature, intrinsic motivation, doing things because they align with your goals, your values. And so there's so much that is entailed with sustainable peak performance. But in a nutshell, I think it's really the key to it is getting that balance right between stress, pushing, and recovery. and understanding how to integrate that into your day so that you do find balance in your body. And the key body system there is your nervous system, getting the balance right between stress, sympathetic, division of your autonomic nervous system, and recovery, the parasympathetic. If you're always in that upregulated stress state, and don't think of high level stress, this is just a busy life. This is the workload, the multitasking, the being on the phone, the chemical load of food, or was that organizational stress, psychosocial stress, physical stress, mental stress. If you're living there, that is a very catabolic state where you're breaking things down to create energy. And the opposite, the parasympathetic, the calming division of the nervous system, is a very anabolic state where you are building energy, you're renewing energy. And so I think the biggest issue that I'm seeing with it, and we'll just talk about, there's athletes, but we're all sort of the same. We all, if you're specialized in that, if you have a job and you're specialized, you should treat yourself like an athlete. The key thing with the people that I work is, how do we oscillate between stress, pushing, and then shifting back into that calm recovery state. And when you do that as a practice and you have awareness around it, that balances your nervous system over time, which is your energy. And, if we think about performance, the essence of performance is control of your energy.
So do you think we've got the terminology or the concept of stress all wrong?
Absolutely, man. And I know that you know this when you ask that question. I know that you know this, but stress is so good for us. Adrenaline, cortisol, these things bolster immune function, improve our focus, allow us to be in an energized state, allow us to upregulate these body systems so that we can expend energy to meet challenge, demand, and, a busy life. The problem is not the stress. The problem is the absence of disciplined, intermittent recovery. And we are addicted to stress. That's the thing, is like, you think when you find a void in your day, when you find a quiet space, what do? Do you sit there? Do you allow yourself to get bored? Do you allow your mind to wander off onto ideas and bring them in and then articulate them with your creative mind? Or do you pick your phone up? Or do you search for some sort of stimulus? The brain is just addicted. Our brains are addicted to stimulus. A big part of this is secondary to, the phone, high resolution imagery. We're training a pattern of multitasking. This here, scrolling through the phone, is training a pattern of multitasking. And then, over time, what that does is it steals your focus. And everything you've ever enjoyed in life is when you've been present and focused on what you're doing. I think we have a big problem with people who, in whatever they're doing, they can't be present or focused because they're so used to multitasking, and they're impacted by the effects of chronic stress, which is mentally agitated.
This is something that I've been thinking about quite a lot, actually, is this kind of art of boredom that we have lost. And I actually, the reason I brought this sort of to the forefront of my mind was because I had an issue with an athlete I'm working with, and he was really anxious. He has been really anxious in his training, and definitely beats himself up a lot. There's tons of stress around what he's doing, comes from a pretty good school. There's a lot of pressures, things like that. And he's seeking high performance. He is a perfectionist. He does want everything to be at such a high standard. But I couldn't quite figure out that he was having we put him in a stressful training session. I gave the instructions to his cricket coach. I was like, make his session chaos. Just make it so that it's really challenging, and then we'll sort of see how it goes after. And we'd bolstered it with a bunch of sort of prompts and stuff to make sure he was safe and able to do the session. But it came out and he thought the world had ended. Like, I'm no good, I'm done, the game's no good. And it was chronically, this stress had just gone through the roof, and anxiety was just flaring up. So then I quizzed him a little bit on what he'd done after the session, and he did 3 things. First thing he did was he would text the coach straight after the session. Now, he would text him straight after the session, which is probably, it was just riddled with negative self-talk and all the things that went wrong in the session. Second was he spoke to his mum on what he wanted to and how the session went. Again, probably highly negative. And then thirdly, he opened up his phone and he scrolled and he went on social media. And then I was thinking about it and I thought, he's a bit of a happiness junkie. He is just seeking dopamine all the time. And what he didn't allow himself to do was to sit and stew in boredom and allow those emotions to sort of dwell in his mind for him to then process them and then be able to unpack them and understand them. But he just blocked them away from his life because he just instantly got on the phone, gave himself that dopamine hit, got scrolling, had some form of dopamine hit, and he neglected the stress that was the one thing that he needed in order to get the outcome that he ultimately wants, which is to be able to deal with this type of stress moving forward and be capable. So for me, it was just a really obvious example of how these things, these devices, are just genuinely getting in a way from a mechanism point of view of being able to even deal with the stress, because you're just providing some other stimulus that doesn't allow you to even understand it or process it.
Yeah, it's it's a problem. But what you're talking about there is someone who is in a very reactive state, and often that is secondary to nervous system dysregulation. So spending too much time in that red part of the nervous system, that sympathetic part of the nervous system, which is designed for survival, right? And this is easy for athletes to do because they're hyper-focused on the sport. They tend to overtrain. They're constantly thinking about game day. And then, so it's easy to get stuck in that red, which is a reactive state. So then when these things are happening, you're not responding, you're reacting. And responding requires taking a step back and having more self-awareness and being, self-reflective. And it's interesting what you said about, reward, messaging the coach. What he's probably looking for, like some form of, feedback in terms of, and it's the same with messaging his mum. And then the reward of being on the phone is the dopamine hit. So it is, yeah, I was at the airport about 4 months ago, and there's a basketball team, elite level basketball team, and I sat there and I watched them, and they're all sitting around together, and we waited for the plane. I sat there for about an hour reading my book, and I barely saw one of them look up in 1 hour, and I'm like, how is that impacting their ability to focus and be present as individuals, but also as a team? I worked with an athlete recently who was having huge difficulties within a game. When he'd make a mistake, he couldn't let it go. He was bringing it into the next play. He was hyper-focusing on it. There's a whole lot of other issues, but I said to him, what is your daily screen time? And it was upwards of 7 hours a day.
That just is such an obvious thing that's happening. And I actually saw this out at dinner the other day, just a group of lads who were sitting down. They all sat down, and it's like, oh, this group have come to enjoy a nice meal together. And then as they sat down, they all got their phones out, and it was about 10 of them. And I thought, why are you here? Like, honestly, what are you doing here?
The reality is, like, the same thing happened to me the other day. I was looking, and I was getting pissed off, and then I realized I do the same thing. I'm in the same boat, and so I'm looking at these guys going, far out, man. They're sitting there on their phone. I do the same thing, and it's I've identified it as a problem, and so I have like strict, rules and regulations around like my social media and my phone use, and it's made a massive difference in terms of my energy, my focus, my productivity, my sleep. Because that thing is, like you're on that 4 to 6 hours a day. It's like watching 4 to 5 movies. The amount of, you're feeding so much stimulus through your brain. Your brain's going, right, what do I do with this information? Do we put in the short-term memory, the long-term memory? Do I tie emotion to it and chuck it into the limbic system of our brain? It's overwhelming. And it's like, what I remind people is our genius zone is our ability to focus, but we have stolen focus because we're putting out so much of our attention into this device.
I've tussled with that. I think I totally will find that it's such a challenge because a lot of my work has been online that you're like, well, in order to do the work, I have to be on the thing that I'm trying to avoid. And this is just like the Matthew effect. It's just piling it on even more. And it's just, I'm just being given more and more of it. And so for me, I've actually downloaded on my phone. I downloaded an app called Opal. I found Opal was really great. It blocked all of the sites or apps that I don't feel I need to be using throughout the core moments of my day, so I physically can't get into them. I have then found one of the things I do at my place is I got rid of a TV. So I actually don't have a TV anymore, or I haven't had a TV for years now, mainly because then I won't sit there and watch it mindlessly. And I sort of started to learn Spanish and the guitar. So those are things that I can actively like engage my brain in and I'm sort of not having to be on a screen or I can read a book, I can do something. But it takes such conscious energy to actually do that. That's the thing that really I think gets to me, is the fact that it takes so much energy to have to pull yourself away from that and to live that way, which is kind of sad, but I feel it's just a part of the times we're in as well.
Well, it comes back to the addiction to stress.
Yeah.
And that thing is addictive, and you do have to have, like, for me, you know, I program my active recovery into my calendar. So at 9 o'clock every night, I go into my gym and I do 1 hour of mobility work. If I wasn't in there, what would I be doing? I'd probably be watching Netflix or on YouTube, or that's just the reality. And so from 9 to 10, dim the lights, I go in, I do my mobility work. I might listen to a podcast. And it has been an absolute game changer because it's shifting my nervous system into that calm parasympathetic state. It's flushing stress hormones out of the body. It's, you think, like, if you are on the phone at night, that is light, that is stimulus, that is stress. And so what is happening is, how our bodies work in terms of that 24-hour cycle is that in the evening, our circadian rhythm, in the evening, the pineal gland is supposed to be releasing melatonin, which is, the sleep hormone. But what is happening when we're viewing this high resolution imagery is that it suppresses melatonin release from the pineal gland, and you're getting adrenaline release from the adrenal gland. So you're going 360 degrees against your natural hormonal, cycle that syncs in with your sleep and your recovery.
I think I find that the thing for me is, especially when you work for yourself, and you're building your own thing, is that you feel like you can't have a day off, and that moment when you take your foot off the gas, it's like, is that the moment when everything just ends and falls apart? And I've fallen to that, and
oh yeah,
and I think athletes feel that as well, right? So it's the same in high performance in sport as well, that you feel, if I stop today, is this thing that I'm not going to do today going to cost me everything that I've been working for? Am I going to lose that momentum? So I guess the question I want to ask as well is, if we're addicted to stress, how do we then become addicted to the things that calm us and deregulate us and help us use that stress to our advantage?
Yeah, well, I think firstly, we don't have to be addicted to anything really. So, but one thing, just when you were chatting then, we tend to equate busyness with productivity, right? And so the idea of not being busy, you're not productive. But it's about shifting our perspective around strength. We tend to think of strength as pushing, and but the real definition of strength is knowing when to push and when to pull back, and shifting into a calm state. It's much easier to get up and punch a boxing bag for 2 minutes as it is to sit down and focus on your body and center your mind and relax and not do anything apart from maybe focus on your breathing. That's much more difficult, right? It's much more difficult to shift into a calm state as it is to shift into a state of upregulation or stress. What was your question?
How do we not become addicted? We won't use that word, but then how do we find enjoyment out of those deregulating methods and modalities?
Well, the most enjoyment you will feel is when your body is constantly trying to find balance, homeostasis, right? And we just get in the way of it. And when you do these practices, let's just take a practice like a 5-minute breathing flow, right? Where you just stop, you lie down for the next 5 minutes, nothing matters. Get rid of expectations, lack of awareness of time, body scan, find where you're holding tension, let it go. And then you go into a breathing flow where you inhale in slowly through your nose, you hold at the top for 5-10 seconds, you then drop it out, melt into the ground, flow back into the next inhale, hold. You do that for 5 minutes and then tap into the condition of your body and mind. And what you will feel is a sense of deep calm, deep focus. The ideal performance state is alert, calm, and focus. And that's what you'll feel after these practices. You will feel alert, calm, and focus. And that is the ultimate form of strength, being able to shift in dynamic situations from an energized to a calm state. Think about, a rugby player kicking a conversion. Do they need to be in the red or the blue? It doesn't matter where they are, as long as they have control of, as long as they're able to grab the dimmer switch. If they're too far in the red, they can dim it back a little bit, right? And these are internal mechanisms like conscious control of your breathing, self-talk, body scans. That's very simple stuff, and it is often the difference between executing and not. But you have to train it as a daily practice. It's like a sniper has to shoot someone from 500 meters away. Do they need to be in the red or the blue? Probably the blue. If I have to shoot you in close range, I've got to be in the red. So what does the sniper do? To shift into a calm, focused state. 2 cycles of this box breathing. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. The brain goes, we're doing that thing again where we slow the breathing rate, we prolong the exhale. That's where we shift into a calm, centered, focused state. And so they can pull it out on demand and under very stressful situations to give them more control. We all have access to that. We just have to train it as a daily pattern. These mind-body practices that are so powerful and really, for me, are the most important forms of strength training. But, the athletes or the people that I work with, they avoid it. I had a client yesterday, and we were trying to integrate into his busy day. He's a corporate business guy. We were trying to integrate active recovery into his day to balance his nervous system over the next 2 to 3 months, to oscillate between the red and the blue. And I gave him a bunch of things, right? And I said, go away and implement these, come back and we'll talk about the effect it had on your energy, your sleep, basically every facet of, his health and wellness. And he turned up and he did everything. He did the cold showers in the morning. He did the exercise. He did all the things that put him into a stress state. The one thing he didn't do was the breathing flow that I gave him, the 10-minute breathing flow. He tried it a couple of times. He didn't like it. Why? Because he had to stop and he had to listen to this thing up top, and he didn't like it. And it agitated him. So he's like, well, what's the point in doing it if, it's agitating? And it's just this, there's 2 things that when I'm working with people that we have to ensure they can do. One is use stress to create calm in the form of like ice bath, sauna, exercise, whatever it might be, controlled stress. You get the sympathetic activation, but you get this beautiful rebound effect after where the parasympathetic nervous system comes back online. This beautiful oscillation between stress and calm. And the most profound forms of calm, I think, this is my own practical experience, come after exposure to controlled stress. When I get out of the ice bath and I go back into the sauna, I feel incredibly calm. But then the other part of that is to be able to shift from whatever physical and mental state you're in into a calm state. And people find that much more difficult and they avoid it.
Well, it's probably because, and just anecdotally thinking about it, having done ice bath exposure and breath work, that when you go into, so I live down here on the south coast of the UK in Brighton, and
nice. I spent 6 years in Cornwall.
Right, you go down there in the morning, you will see the sea dippers. You go down in the evening, you'll see the sea dippers going into the sea, and then you'll see the promenade full of people looking at them, going, "You crazy motherfucker, what's going on?" And they will go into the water, and they will undoubtedly, you know that feeling they've got when they're putting their robes on and they're warming up. You know that when they're doing that, you feel this sense of incredible calm. But it usually is. And just what I'm thinking is that it's because you've pulled yourself to this incredibly stressed state that you even heighten the stress that you were feeling on your day-to-day life. It was so intense that anything left of that feels so much calmer, feels so much better, right?
Yeah.
Whereas your day-to-day, you're just numb to it. You're just numb to that regular stress. Like that busyness, you are just numb to it. So therefore, you're not going to feel that, oh, well, I'm not actually that stressed. I'm not actually that bad right now. So I don't need to do that breath work. Like I feel calm as I am right now. So why do I need to do it? I think that's probably what's going on.
Yeah, I think people equate a lot of people equate being recovered and calm. I think they confuse it with being fatigued. There's a difference there. There's a difference between relaxation and active recovery. But you know what? When you get out of the cold, so when these people are going for their morning swim and they get out of the cold, they get a combination of adrenaline, stress hormone, they call it a stress hormone, adrenaline and dopamine. And it's that combination that makes you feel so euphoric and just so, like it makes you feel so good, like, and also when you're in there, when you're in the cold, all you're thinking about is your body. It brings this intense internal focus. Man, I've got to control my breathing. I'm going to be in here for 2 minutes. My mind latches to the end. I grab it and bring it back. So we can use this tool, the cold water immersion. We can use it as a tool for mental skill development. I get into the ice bath. Before I get in, I visualize it. As soon as I get in, I control my breathing, soft, quiet, and light. I do a body scan. I don't hold any tension in any muscle. When my mind latches to the end, because it will, you have no control of that. But what you do have control of is grabbing it and bringing it back. Now you're training a pattern of focus under pressure. We only have one stress response. So when you train these patterns of control, you can apply that into every other situation where you need more control. And this is where the ice bath becomes a very powerful tool for more self-awareness, more self-control, more stress control, both physically and mentally. You see unquantifiable changes with people that start an ice bath practice. And even if they don't understand, even if they're not being told all the stuff that I'm talking about, they work it out when they're in there. They work out, I've got to control my breathing. I can't be tense for 2 minutes. I have to relax my body. And it forces you to listen to what's going on up top. Get out. No, you got this. Get through the next hurdle, like it's a mental battle in there. So you're getting a better understanding of your mind.
I think it's always, when I've practiced those, there's an element of curiosity, and also was curiosity as to like what's next. So what happens if I just hang in here a little bit longer, right? And I do this with people I work with and on the app, and I talk about the art of beginning again. It's like, okay, well, whatever's just happened, like I can either live in the stress and the shame and the non-forgiveness of what's just happened, but I can actually just begin again. And that might just be this next breath. That might just be the next breath that I'm taking, and the fact that if I just focus on that, let's see where it goes. Let's see what happens. There's nothing to say that this next minute is the most enjoyable minute of this ice bath, rather than the last 5 that have just gone from it, or the last 2, or the last 30 seconds, whatever might have happened, right? There's always that curiosity that can come from that.
Yeah, there is. And we in the athlete fight camps, we have I always have like a bit of a challenge. This one fight camp, we created a challenge with the cold water, so 1 degree cold water. I won't go into detail around exactly what we're doing there, but it is some type of breath hold work, which is very physically and mentally challenging. And at the start of the fight camp, we built up to this over sort of 8 to 10 weeks to be able to get in the ice bath and do this breath hold work. And when it came time the last week, and the certain athlete got in there, it was ugly, but he was able to do it. It's 3 minutes of being in there with some breath hold work, and then it was my turn. And I got in there, and I got to the 3rd minute, and I had this overwhelming self-talk come in, which was very negative. I can't do this. I have to stop. And in that moment, that person came over to me. He could see that I was about to stop, and he said, "You've got this. You can do it, man. Just keep pushing. You're good." And it got me through the last 30 seconds, and it was, I had to really push, but I got it. And I said to him afterwards, I said, if you hadn't come over in that moment, I would have stopped. And all he said to me was, "Be your own voice." And I went away from that, and I have never forgotten that, because in that moment, I reacted. And there was a split second then where I needed to like just stop, pause, and, hey, you're okay. You've got this. It's only 30 seconds. That top-down control of stress. Obviously, if you have to stop, you have to stop, but it can be these, these mental skills that are so simple. It can be just a power phrase. You're ready. You've got this. That can be the difference between executing and not. And I thought that was just such a profound thing to say. Be your own voice.
I love that. I'm probably going to take that away with me as well. And
I've never forgotten it, man. Then it reminds me in moments where my self-talk is off, to have the self-awareness to, be my own voice. Because, self-talk is one of the most important mental skills. And it's something that I spend time every day, just 2 minutes, where it might be that I'm driving. I talk about myself in a way that is, you're confident, you're strong, it's incredible what you've achieved. I pump myself up. Why would you not? We have a negative bias toward more negative thoughts and thinking. The thing is that, a thought comes in, it stimulates thinking. You tie emotion to that, it dictates action and outcome. So thought control, going right back to the very beginning, thought control becomes very important, because thoughts and thinking are different. And this is where these meditative practices are so powerful, man, because they allow us to have this better relationship with our body and our mind. On any given day, you might do a meditation. It might be an awful experience. You can't get calm. You can't get relaxed. Well, it allows you to stop and be like, well, what's going on? I didn't sleep well last night. I've been eating shitty food. I haven't been focusing on my recovery. People use heart rate variability. Like, they're looking at this measurement to dictate, what it is that, but yes, we need that technology, but not at the expense of understanding your own body. And the humanistic part of this is just those practices that give you a better understanding of what's going on under the hood.
That difference between thought and thinking, I think, is so true. It's something that I've discovered for myself. The fact that I would have, and even if I put it in a sporting context, or just even my day-to-day life, that negative bias is that unconscious thinking and thoughts, that it's the unconscious thoughts that just run into your mind without you even having to give 1 second of thought into what's going on. They just happen. They are unconscious, and it is a stream of bullshit most of the time. And then, but the conscious thinking is kind of your armory to fight back at it. And I think that we should be placing an onus on how powerful that is and needs to be now, especially in the world we're living in right now, because that unconscious negativity is being fueled continuously without us knowing. And we've already gone into where that's coming from. But that unconscious negativity that is there, you'll just run that playbook over and over again if you're not consciously fighting back with some form of thinking that you want to happen, right? You want to happen. And it's interesting you said about, I am confident, I've got this, I am this person. Are you connecting that with like a feeling? Not just words, but like you feel it as well as you say it.
Yeah. And that's that whole, the inseparable link between the mind and the body. So my self-talk has a ripple-on effect physiologically. The things that I tell myself are communicated from my brain to my body through my nervous system, and vice versa, and this has to start weeks out from competition. Top-down control, the things that we're telling us, self-talk, reframing. Everything has to be telling your body that you're alert, calm, and focused, that you are ready. And then the signals from your body to your brain, these are things like your posture, how you walk, how you turn up, your breathing. All has to be telling your brain that you are in a state of alert, calm, and focus, that you're ready. And these subliminal messages that we're, a lot of them are coming from our subconscious state, and we listen to them, and that stimulates this thinking and emotion and outcome. The self-awareness is being able to be aware of, hold on, I don't need to react to this. I need to get into my creative brain, because all of these thoughts, this negative bias, all of these thoughts it is all just about survival, right? Like our brains are set up, are wired for survival. And so it might be a negative thought, but it's just trying to protect you. A lot of the time it's just trying to protect you, but we don't always need to be protected. Sometimes we need to stand back and use our creative mind to better articulate what's going on. That's it. That thought's cool, but I don't need that right now. What I need is this. And that's the ability to reframe is such a powerful thing, man. And the thing is, if you have a thought and you believe in that thought, or you act on it, you will find evidence everywhere to support that, right? If I'm saying, oh, I'm fucking shit, I'm no good, I'm this, I'm that, I will find evidence everywhere to confirm that. If I'm putting good energy out, if I'm raising my consciousness and my level of thinking, I will find evidence everywhere around me to confirm that stuff. And this is where manifesting is just so powerful, man. It's like the things that I've manifested in my life, obviously you have to go out and do it. but I manifest things all the time. It's uncanny when you put it out there. Things start falling in your lap in a way that blows my mind. But you got to put the right you got to put the right energy out there.
Yeah, how are you putting it out there? Are you physically saying it? Are you writing it? Are you telling people? How are you putting it out there?
Through your thoughts, your emotional regulation, your actions, your interactions with other people, your ability to be more self-aware, not just of yourself, but of other people. And it's sort of all about being, like positive thoughts and happy and all that sort of stuff. You got to be real, but yeah, it's encompassed in like everything that you do, right? When I walk down the beach for a surf, I look around, I just go, "Fuck, man! I'm so grateful that I get to do this." And as I'm walking down the beach, I listen to the sounds. The sound of the ocean, the sound of nature. This is all stuff that like raises your consciousness and allows you to tap into positive energy. But it has to be like an active practice, and I practice it every day because I know how powerful it is, and I understand the impact that it has on me, both physically and mentally. And just that stuff on nature, it's like the most powerful way, I believe, to balance your nervous system and create mental clarity is to be in nature. It strips away all the noise. You're using your peripheral vision. You're listening. We know based on the research, just listening to the sounds of nature activates the calming division of your nervous system. And these tools are available to most everybody. I've got one client who said he works in a high-rise in the bottom of the city, and he said to me, "Hey, it's great for you, man. You're out at Piha. You're in nature all the time. I work in a high-rise." And I said to him, "Hey, man, the ocean's 500 meters from your down at the bottom of town there." And so at lunchtime now, he goes down, he walks out to the end of the dock, he sits down, he looks around, and he does his breathing flow, and it's that simple.
There's a poet called David Whyte who I'm really fond of, and he talks about horizons, just both the outer and inner horizon and the meeting of both of those. But the actual metaphor that he does talk about is that we as human beings, we love horizons. And there is research in that as well, that the fact that just looking at a horizon can regulate your nervous system. And there's I think it was regulation nervous system, but it's linked with improved well-being, essentially. Don't quote me on that. But the thing that I feel in my life is, because again, I'm by the sea and I am 500 meters. So every morning I will go down and I literally will catch myself I'm walking a straight line straight to the sea. I get there and I stare at the ocean for 5-10 minutes. Like, that's pretty much how I start my day. And if it's raining, we had a storm recently here in the UK. Like, I was out there in the storm with my jacket on, just staring at the horizon. And when people come from London, come down to visit, and I take them down there, they're just like, you just see this instant shift. And I go, it's the space, isn't it? It's just being able to see that horizon, see the space, feed it. It's not, we haven't sat and done a meditation. We haven't done a conscious breathwork session, but you could argue that was a meditative process. It was a meditation in itself, that we were totally present in that moment, just seeing the horizon. And for me, it's always been, I'm so drawn to living in places that are close to water. When I've been in Australia, you're always near water when you're in Australia. But when I was living in other places, I'm always near water. And it's because I feel that horizon is this sense of space and, yeah, just pure mental clarity. It just connects you so much better.
Yeah, we run this workshop here, this Come Under Pressure workshop, and the first thing that we do with this group of 24 people is we take them into nature. We walk along. But before we do it, we tell them, the effect of anything, Carol Dweck, the effect of anything is a combination of what you're doing plus what you think about what you're doing. So before we go down, and we tell them some of the benefits of being in nature, and I didn't quote that word for word, but yeah, the effect of anything is a combination of what you're doing plus what you think about what you're doing. So when I go down in nature, I'm telling myself, man, this is the best thing for my recovery. This is flushing stress hormones out of my body. This is, improving my focus. This is making me more calm. Now it's going to amplify the effect of the thing. So we tell these people this important connection that we had with the energy, and out here at Piha, on the west coast of New Zealand, is the energy of the Waitakere Ranges, the forest, the black iron sand, which is broken down volcanic rock, titanomagnetite they call it, And then we've got the Tasman Sea, and it's this crazy melting pot of energy that you feel, but only if you tap into it, only if you're consciously aware of it. So we get them down, and we hike up through the bush, and we get to this lookout over the Tasman Sea. And we do a 5-minute meditation of just listening to the sounds of nature, scanning the horizon. And at the end of the weekend, when we go around, we ask, what is the one thing? If most people refer back to that moment where they're sitting on the top of the cliff there, overlooking the Tasman Sea, and they report a profound calmness that they haven't found in so long. And then as part of like the knowledge behind that, when we're in the classroom, we look at the science and the research behind reconnecting with nature and how that balances your nervous system, how that creates more mental clarity. Man, when I'm having like a hard time, my go-to is walking up to the waterfall, jumping in the waterfall. And it takes about 20 to 30 minutes of being in nature for all of the noise just to strip away. And that's where I do my best thinking. That's where I come up solutions to some of these like problems that I've over-escalated. But when I have mental clarity, I'm able to shift my perspective and look at them in a different way. And these tools are we are designed to be in nature all the time, right? And we've evolved to having to live in concrete jungles, and I just think that we haven't evolved fast enough to be doing what we're doing. We're not designed to be as specialized as what we are. If you're sitting in an office and you're looking at a computer for 6 to 8 hours a day, you better train for that, because there is no way that that's not going to significantly impact your physical and mental health if you don't. You have to train to sit at a desk and stare at a computer.
This is why I always find it interesting. And I was talking to Andrew Steele on the podcast, who's a former Olympian. We were talking about the crossover where you, as an ex-athlete, both him and I, we get asked to go to businesses and talk about what businesses can learn from us. And I always find it interesting being in those rooms, because I'm like, my job was to be on a grass field, throw a ball around and hit it with a stick, and then go home and try and recover the best I could to come back and do it again tomorrow. And by definition, every day you're out in some form of nature. I could put my feet on grass every day. I'm out and outside. Yes, you go in gyms, you go in facilities, but majority of the time you're outside doing the sport and you're in nature. And then when you go to a business, they're like, okay, tell us how we can be better. I'm like, I'm not trained to be in an office for 8-9 hours, right? Like, this is not what I've been involved in. You could maybe take some of my story of how I got what I got and the sort of discipline that it takes to get there. Maybe you can take that. But I think there is an under exaggeration of how being in an office, how that does actually require a totally different high performance mindset, because you're doing something that is so unnatural to what we are biologically wired to do. And it requires conscious effort to maintain that at a high performance. We're not designed to go into offices in the way that we are. So we have to treat it like a completely different high performance domain. And you mentioned before the call, being a corporate athlete, like treating yourself like an athlete that's in a corporate environment is 100% the thing you have to do.
It is. And the reality is that most people aren't. And it's, if you're just to frame it up a little bit, if the eyes are the first line of the nervous system, right? They're relaying information through to your brain from the external world. Now, if you're looking at a screen, your peripheral vision, you're narrowing your field of vision. Now, back in the day, when we narrowed our field of vision, it was often to go into battle, for hunting. These were survival things, right? So when you are looking at a screen, narrowed field of vision, it is sending signals through to your brain that, hey, we need to be in a hyper-focused state, activate the sympathetic part of the nervous system, upregulated adrenaline, cortisol. Now, in the background, you imagine 5-10 years of doing that. How does that impact these other body systems when you are in a constant upregulated state? What does it do to your breathing system? It increases your breathing rate. It normally causes shallow breathing into the upper chest. Normally a pattern of 3 types of dysfunctional breathing: shallow breathing into the upper chest, breath holding, and normal inhaled short exhale. Now, most people are not aware that this type of focus stress, or what they're doing in terms of their specialization, is impacting these body systems in the background. And then so that's where the imbalance starts creeping in. You feel it as signs and symptoms: irritability, reduced connection and empathy with others, difficulty focusing, brain fog, impacted sleep, fluctuations in energy throughout the day. And this is where getting this oscillation, this rhythmic movement between stress, right, I've got push really hard for the next 2 to 3 hours, and then shifting back into a calm state. So whatever that might be, going out, going for a walk around the park, doing some exercise, doing a breathing flow, that is educating your nervous system that it doesn't need to be in the red all day. If you're spending all day in the red, don't expect to sleep at night, because the nervous system doesn't work like that. We don't just, right, I'm leaving work now, we'll just switch off. If it's been in the red all day, this linearity, this burning it in this stress state, that's where it gets used to. The body is just an adaptive machine, and we are adapting constantly to stress, and it's about identifying that imbalance and then working on it. And so this is why, if you are a corporate athlete, you need to train for what you're doing.
Without the screens, without
Oh
being
yeah,
in
it's like,
the office for another 9 hours to train for being in it for
yeah.
another 9 hours.
I give a talk, keynote talk around this corporate athlete, and a mindset shift towards treating yourself like an athlete. And then I say to people, who's specialized here? None puts their hand up, and I say, what do you do? I'm a marketer. I'm telesales. And it's like, well, you're specialized. If you're specialized, you're an athlete. And people are like, oh, I never really thought about myself as an athlete. An athlete's just someone who's specialized, who's and we all, I mean, at the end of the day, we should all be treating ourselves like athletes.
Totally. When it comes to performing under pressure, you spoke about your workshop, but how do you shift this into in the moment when you're under pressure? How does it become transferable to those moments? I know you spent a lot of time in the fighting industry, UFC, where there is chaos everywhere. How does that translate? How do we translate these methods into those chaotic worlds and actually harness some performance?
Yeah, well, the first thing is to find balance in your nervous system, because when you have a balanced nervous system and you go into stress and pressure environments, you're going in there with a balanced nervous system. You're not in a constant reactive state. And so, when I say nervous system dysregulation, it is imbalance in the nervous system, imbalance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And nowadays, it's very easy to have that imbalance start impacting our physical and mental health, and having it spill over into reactive patterns of behavior. And so working every day to balance that with active forms of recovery that shift you into a calm state is so important for performance, because all you're taking into performance is your patterns of behavior under stress and pressure, and this dysregulation in your nervous system. So just to take a step back from that, what is the pattern that you train under stress and pressure? I'm just about to meet up with the guys tomorrow, and they're going to be doing these hill runs, right? So when it becomes really stressful, what is the pattern? Is the pattern that you lose form? You start becoming, your posture goes. Is the pattern that your breathing goes? You start over breathing. Is the pattern that your mind becomes agitated and starts latching to things? Well, that is the same. If you're training that pattern, that is the same pattern that will come out in stress and pressure moments in another environment or situation, right? Because you've trained that pattern over and over and over again. And the breathing there is a really key one, because if you go watch a fight, there's something called a one-to-one breathing pattern. So it's basically hyperventilating. It sounds like this. You've got about 30 to 40 seconds before you either get knocked out or taken down to the ground or submitted, or you either sell out, you do something that you normally wouldn't do, because that type of physiological stress is so agitating for the mind. So you can't focus on game plan. Your mind, being an agitated mind, starts latching to everything. And and then, something bad happens. So, and you can see it so clearly when you know what to look for. And the ones that have trained breathing, conscious awareness of breathing, they have good rate control, good depth. They're able to go back to the corner, use their breathing to recover, because what do you have in the corner? You have some ice, some words from your coach, but it's all internal control. They have, much better ability to regulate their physical and mental response to stress. And so it is understanding that we actually have to train, if we think about, I often ask people, how much of success and performance would you attribute to, mental skills such as confidence, stress control, focus, self-talk, mindset, discipline? And it's a lot, but then how much time do you spend developing and mastering these skills? Well, it's normally much less than the physical side of, skill acquisition in sport.
What do you see some of the, I guess, common mistakes that people make in their behaviors when it does come to performing under pressure?
I think you just always fall back to the level of training, right? And so it's easy, you train all these physical skills, but game day is very much about mental skills. It's about, regulating your physical and mental state with things like self-talk and reframing and conscious control of your breathing and, understanding that discipline and consistency and confidence are skills that you have to train for, and so that you can bring that over into high stress, high pressure environments. And I think the biggest mistake I see is that, if we're talking about athletes, is that they just don't give this stuff enough focus. They don't, you ask most coaches or athletes, what are mental skills? What are they? How do we train them? Most of them wouldn't really have a clue. Like every coach is going to have, every strength and conditioning coach, every coach is going to have mental skills that they pass on to the athletes, right? But how many of them actually understand what mental skills are? I'll give you an example, like confidence. We think of confidence as a feeling. So we go into these situations and we look for a feeling of confidence, or we say, we've lost confidence. How I text this is that confidence is not a feeling. Confidence is a skill that you can train for. And how you train to improve confidence is through that feedback loop of, you have to be willing to try. First of all, you have to have courage to try, to really put yourself out there, to be okay with failure and setbacks, and then be able to dust that off and get back and come back more resilient. You have to be, and over time, that willingness to try, despite self-doubt, anxiety, apprehension, tension, fear, creates competence. And it is the competence that creates confidence. But you have to be willing to try to put yourself out there. The problem is we have such a fear of failure, but we have this negative connotation with the word failure. Why? Well, growing up, what do these kids see when the All Blacks lose? What do these kids see when the fighters lose? They get berated on social media. They're in the newspaper, and everyone's, what if we got behind these athletes when they fail and actually started to change the culture of, man, this is like where all the learning takes place. This is where now you've got this beautiful opportunity to come back and learn from that. But these kids are watching this, and subconsciously they're like, well, failure's bad because you get berated and look what happens in the media and online. And so they stop trying. So it's getting people to understand that competence is a skill you can train if you're willing to try. Despite apprehension, tension, self-doubt, you put yourself out there anyway. Man, you're going to fail a bunch of times, but over time, the repeat exposure creates competence and confidence. And so when you look at it like that, it changes your whole perspective of confidence. You no longer start looking for a feeling. You start understanding that. And, people say, I've lost my confidence. You haven't lost your confidence. You're just blocked from the feeling of it because you stop trying, which is the source of.
Yeah, I think back to when I've felt moments of pressure, and you're right, both ways, they just end up being these self-perpetuating spirals of, if you want to fear that failure, you'll fear it more and more and more and more, and it will just fuel that reason not to have the courage to step forward and build your confidence and take action and build the proof that you can do it. But the opposite is true, right? You change your perspective and you start doing more of it, you just spiral the other way and you start to show yourself that you can. I saw the competency confidence loop, and it exists. You've added courage into there, which I think is really interesting. And I'd been playing with the idea of like whether competency came first and then courage, because I wondered whether if you could feel like you could do something, you would then have the courage to go and do it. But I then, with my perfectionistic head screwed on, I was like, well, I would want to have a certain level of competency before I even tried to do something. So therefore, I probably wouldn't take that step in the first place, right? And you don't,
Yes.
yeah. So you never take that step, and that's the perfectionist's curse. The perfectionist's curse is that you just constantly want to take that first step only when you are at the level that you feel that you should be in order to take that step. So I like that idea of having the courage to try. And I think that's important. It's not the courage to win. It's not the courage to succeed. It's not the courage to have an outcome. It's just try, which is built more into the character that you are in the effort to go towards whatever that goal is.
Yeah, because what's stopping us, what is stopping us is normally a combination of three things: fear of failure, fear of letting people down, fear of what other people might think. And it stops us so much, and being like really aware of all this stuff, I can start seeing now where I'm holding myself back. And I use just like a very simple exercise. So I'll give you an example. About a couple of months ago, I had to go and talk in front of a group. It was a Q&A, something I'd kind of never done before. And it was how to navigate, how businesses navigate through ever increasing change and pressure and stress. And I got to the car park. They told me to get there half an hour early. Got to the car park and I was sitting there and I was like, man, I rationalized to sit in my car and not go in because it meant that I'd have to go in there. I wouldn't know anyone, would be a bit uncomfortable. And I was totally okay with that. I just rationalized in my head, I'll just wait here and I'll go in with 10 minutes to go. In that moment, I caught myself. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take action. And that means I have to physically move. So I open the door, I get out and I walk in there. And when I walk in there, I have the posture right. I had my breathing right. I have my self-taught right. And it was the best half an hour. People come up and talked and it set the whole thing up. But it would have been easy for me to stay in the car. And in the past, that's what I've done. And these key mental skills that allow you to have more self-awareness of your own limiting patterns of behavior that are subconscious. You're consciously aware of them, but in stress and pressure moments, they come from your subconscious state based on your practical experience of the world, your emotions, your values, your perspective. Identifying those subconscious patterns and then changing them is change. And it's a beautiful thing. As human beings, we have the ability to do that. We do an exercise called mindset things where you identify the weakness and then you create a mindset theme around it. So one of my weaknesses for forever was anger. And I know now that anger was like a form of anxiety. It was like I'd been through stuff that I didn't have the skills to deal with, so I just bottled it up. It came out as anger, and I used to think it was a strength. It got to a point in my 30s where I was like, man, this is a real weakness. So identify the weakness. My mindset is I remain calm and in control no matter what. That has changed my life. And you think about all the systems and protocols you have for business and household or a sporting team. Do each of these individuals, or do you have a system and protocol for the most important thing you have, your mindset? The rules and regulations you live by that dictate the way you respond to things. And this is just a beautiful exercise where it allows you to identify these subconscious, self-limiting patterns of behavior that are holding you back, come up with a mindset thing around it, rote learn the mindset thing, and that pattern ends up becoming subconscious. And so when you go into stress and pressure environments, that is the pattern that is coming out.
Does that theme that you create have to be something that you've experienced and you kind of know to be true, or could it be aspirational, something you want to strive to be, but you haven't yet done?
It's a combination of both. It has to be a combination of both, right? It has to be identify the pattern that you want to change, or what is the pattern that you want to exhibit. And there's normally some crossover there, but it's both. Like I have mindsets around, what I want my mindset to be. And it's not that I've identified a pattern of behavior. It's just that this is what I want my mindset to be. For the longest time, man, I was in the bottom class at school, and I never tried. When I left school, I never tried. I never took on jobs that would really challenge me. I always did things that, because in the background, I was like, well, I'm not academic, I'm not smart. I never went to uni after school. Not until I was 29 did I go back to uni, and I put so much pressure on myself because of that fear of failure, because I'd failed at school. And I identified this as a real pattern that was holding me back in so many facets of life. So I created a mindset theme around that. My mindset is that my mind works in unique ways, and it's up to me to harness that in a way that, in my intelligence, in a way that works for me. And, I recorded these and I'd listen to them every morning because I wanted to distill them in here. And then, I'd go against them, but they'd really impact me because I was going against the system and protocol that I had made for, this thing. And so it allowed me to catch myself when I was going against them. Hold on, my mindset is da 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 da. I think that this exercise is like life changing for people. It's an exercise we bring into, like, with all of the people that I work with, and into this calm under pressure workshop, and then we get people to share. So we get in a circle at the start of the day in nature, because it strips away all the noise, gets better mental clarity. And people, there's something about when you're in nature, people just share, man. They're just like, you get into a circle up in the bush and people are just like boom, boom, boom. And it's an exercise where we go around, talk about one of your weaknesses. Then later on in the class, we bring that weakness up and they have to create a mindset theme around it. Right now, you've got to go and train that new mindset. And it's not going to be easy because, even if these patterns are perceived or they're negative, they're holding us back, it is still like linked to our identity in some way. And the idea of changing that, some of them are like safety barriers, right? So some of them are like what we believe are keeping us safe. And when you strip that away, it leaves you kind of a bit vulnerable.
Yeah. I think this is something that I felt I did with myself growing up, that I felt I was creating themes in it. And it was the one thing that I think held me in good stead, was the fact that I was
Wow.
latching
How
on.
did you decide to do that?
I used other people's stories.
Hmm.
I used story, and I would watch other people's stories, and I was like, what would my story be? And then what theme can I,
Wow.
how can I create that? And it's only through having done therapy in the last sort of year or so that, and sort of really reflectively going back to that kid that I was like, I didn't consciously think of this. This wasn't something that I woke up and went, right, my to-do list today is to create this avatar that I want to be. It was just like, no, those are types of people that I want to be like, and these are the types of people that I think are role models in the world, and I want to follow that, and I want to, that's going to make decisions really easy for me moving forward, because if I can follow the path of being the role model that I want to be, when I'm met with a decision and it's, do I go to this party and take drugs and drink, or do I and have a great time with my friends, or do I go and do this thing that is gonna maybe throw those friendships away, but also this is towards the goal that I want and how the person I want to be. Okay, that's the road I'm going to take. And I think right now some people are lost and maybe lack this confidence, because it's not about competency, but their confidence might be because they don't really know who they are. They don't understand these mindsets that they could have and the theme that they can put around it. And what we're talking about here of taking action and doing something about anything, right? Just having the courage to try and build that confidence starts to build the proof, even if it's one step at a time, that you are the person that you say you are and that you want to be. And just a small amount of proof will build your confidence in that character that you are. And then from there, you can start building those themes of who you are and more around it, and your negative outcome, the negative situations of your life, and what themes are created there. But I think so many people are just lost in, I don't know what my themes are. I don't know who I am really, or what I want from these things that I'm going after.
Yeah, and that's why, like, having purpose is so important. Like the purpose becomes the thing that drives you to do, the things that require motivation, discipline, and consistency, and all the rest of it. I was working with a 16-year-old kid the other day, and I said to him, "What do you think of failure?" And he said, "It's bad." He said, "You don't want it." Those are his exact words. And we talked about how this was coming up in his life. He was a young water polo player, and it was coming up in all sorts of ways that were detrimental to his performance. He would check out of games when there was a possibility that if he injected himself in, he would fail. And so we came up with a mindset theme around this. We spent a lot of it, time in that day, like setting him up for failure and getting him to identify, when things get, gnarly and he is exposed, like he's pulling himself back. And so his mindset was around failure. Now imagine if we brought this into the schools, because you're talking about you tapped into this as a relatively young age. I'm sure that had a profound effect on how you turned up in the world. Of course it did. But these kids, imagine if we did this exercise. I think it's just there should be a class at school that is around the skills of stress, mental skill development. Because if we have, I don't know what it's like over there, but in New Zealand, we're talking about a mental health crisis, and these kids, we have the highest rate of suicide per capita in the world. And these are young kids that are, very young kids that are having significant mental health issues. And so if it's the biggest problem, then it should be, I believe that should be and I'm sure that the schools are teaching this stuff, but on a deeper level, the stuff that we're talking about, and using the athletes as a bit of a, I think the athletes have all these beautiful things that could ripple down into, these kids in general population. And the theme is, what happens when you lose? You get back up and you have to go back. You've got to go back into the fire, and that's so uncomfortable, especially as an athlete when you've got people talking and people downing you, and but you got to do it. And it's that repeat exposure over time that creates the competence and the confidence.
Well, we've got the same issue here in the UK. It's a global mental health crisis, really, for young people, I think. And I don't see the conversation in those schools when I'm going and giving talks and I'm in there. I don't see that conversation around mental health being honest enough, because the teachers, and the teachers are just heroes of the planet, in my opinion. They're being asked to do things in their jobs that are above and beyond what they signed up to do. And I think that conversation is hard for them to have, because there's so many pressures on them if they get things wrong. The cancel culture of the world has put them in a cycle of, if I say the wrong thing, then I'm going to lose my job, so I won't say it. But then if I don't say it, it's at the detriment of the development of the kids. And so I'm stuck in this hard place. And I said to you that before we started, I put up this post the other day that you can't mental health your way out of accountability. And I think that's what we've kind of got to in the school system, is that they've stripped the accountability away from the kids and go, look, it's not your fault really that you're in this state. And while some of that will be true, we've spoken about how the devices are almost uncontrollable for them and what it can do for them. But there is an element that if you wrestle back that accountability, if you start to take control of identifying, processing, and managing your emotions, that the outcome of that mental strength that you're building, that mental capability that you're building in yourself, the byproduct will be that you feel good about yourself, that you understand yourself, and that is positive mental health. And you go back to what I was talking about when I was a kid, is that I did it just out of the fact that I kind of felt like it was more aspirational for a goal that I wanted to get. I wanted to be a professional cricketer. I needed to find a way in that I needed to develop that mindset that could potentially get me on that road. And as well, I always saw myself as an underdog because of my condition, and that was all of my story that I was creating. And I was like, right, if I do that, maybe when I'm 30, people will look back at what I did and go, geez, yeah, that's worthwhile. Or I could at least inspire the 14, 15-year-old version of me. And I then just kind of took that on as the thing that I wanted to do, and it made me impervious to peer pressure a little bit, because I was like, look, I don't care what you think too much. Yes, it hurts what you think, but also at the same time, I say I didn't grow up with social media, right? I could go home and do sweet fuck all. Like, I could do nothing when I got home. I could stare at the ceiling and do nothing. And whereas now it's you can't, right? You're tapped in all the time, so there is those added pressures. But I do think the accountability can be placed back on them, and we have that accountability. Not just young people, all of us. It's in the parents, it's in the coaches, it's in everyone. We are accountable for the impact that we're having on ourselves and everyone around us.
Well, we're responsible for everything. So anything that happens to you, you're responsible for it because you have a choice. And because you have a choice, everything's on you, whether it lands in your lap or not. And I think that's a really good mindset to have, because we often say, why is this happening to me versus why is this happening for me? And I think that just ability to reframe that is, it doesn't matter how bad something is that happens to you. And I mean, like, it can be really bad. You can find a way to use it to your advantage. Absolutely.
I think back to the moments when I felt pressure the most, and it was all because I was worried about me. Like it is like pressure is. It's ultimately like the protection of you, isn't it? And it's how can you kind of get out of your own way, and it kind of comes back to purpose. So how do we build a bigger purpose around the individual so that you kind of take that pressure away from themselves?
Yeah. And I think, like, in those key moments, like those real stress and pressure moments where you need to execute, like, often being in your head is not the best place. It can be an overwhelming place. I think tying this back into, like, these simple skills, like, in those moments, just going through, do a body scan, find where you're holding tension, let it go. 3 cycles of consciously controlling your breathing gets you out of your head into your body, slowing things down, giving you more control, which has this rebound or ripple on effect back up top in terms of creating more calm and mental clarity. And you see this, the best performers in the world are the ones that tapped into this stuff, these mind body. You go listen to an interview of Novak Djokovic. What's he talking about? He's talking about meditation. He's talking about breath work. And, we tend to think that all athletes are doing this stuff. And we know that they're not. In fact, a large percentage of them are not doing this stuff, but we know based on very clear science and research that these meditation, the most powerful way to improve self-awareness, focus, to get a better relationship with your mind and your body, but so few people are doing it. I personally don't understand, like, if you don't have a meditative practice or some kind of mind-body practice, then you're missing out on such a big part of health and performance.
I think you're not serious about yourself. And if you're not serious about yourself, then you're probably not too serious about what it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah, and some people don't want to, like, achieve it, or some people just want to go through life and be, just do their job, and they're not looking for, like, because if we think about elite level performance, like elite level, that requires a mindset, a dedication. It requires immense sacrifice that most people are not willing to. And when you work with these people, or these performers, or these athletes that are achieving elite performance, you can see the things that they're doing, and the commonality, one of the common practices is meditation. And you only need to listen to the greats, the Michael Jordans, the Kelly Slaters, the Novak Djokovic. They all talk about this stuff in their interviews, breathwork, meditation, self-awareness, mental skill development. They're tapping into this stuff. But the thing is, it's simple. And I think, like, we tend to get into this mindset of all of the stuff is quite convoluted, like the mental skills, it's not convoluted at all. It's actually very simple. Take breathwork, for example. Like, we think there's this mysterious thing around breathwork. Breathwork is ridiculously simple. You're breathing. You do it 20 to 30,000 times a day. We just get you better access to your diaphragm, better lateral expansion, better ability to use that system to create calm. And it is so simple, but we mystify it. And this is one of the things that frustrates me about the breathing community, is that you become a breathing coach and you think you've got this elixir to life, this thing that, like, solves everything. It's just one part of the puzzle. And someone asked me the other day, like, when you're working with clients, when would you not start with breathing? Meaning, like, Of course, you always start with breathing. No, you don't. What are the things that are causing breathing imbalance? Maybe that's where you should start. A step back. Getting people to understand their own journey, their own self-limiting patterns that they're bringing into life. And like I feel like that, there's so many bits of the puzzle. The breathing is such an important one, but we've created this sort of like this mysterious thing about it, and we bring the wrong terminology. Because this is a big part of my training is the breath work, but it's about, we hear this common cue, breathe into your belly. And you hear this in yoga classes, you hear it from people that are talking about breathing, and you see like these people lying there with one hand on their belly and one hand on the upper chest. It's like your belly is your stomach. You can't breathe into your stomach. When you are focusing on pushing your belly out when you inhale and pulling it in when you exhale, your diaphragm's barely moving because your mind-body connection is so important. What does your diaphragm look like? Where does it sit? What happens when you inhale? It drops down, the ribcage expands laterally. And so we bring like better visual connection to this muscle, better understanding of how it moves and how it attributes to postural control, power production, recovery, oxygenation. It's not just a muscle for breathing per se. It's a muscle for better endurance, better power production. Now, when you inhale, diaphragm drops down, increases the pressure inside the intra-abdominal cavity. When you release that pressure on the punch or on the kick or on the golf swing, you're creating more distal power.
I think the reason why people overcomplicate this stuff and they make it sound so esoteric and elusive, and the fact that they hold the elixir to life and the keys to the kingdom comes from the ego of the practitioner. It's that I need to be seen as the Messiah that can heal all, and I've got the secrets, therefore come join my 10-week course that will show you that way. And I think that's where it's got complicated in that sense, where these practices, which are built from yogic traditions, which were so basic in their beginning, that we want to make them feel complicated because we want to make us maybe feel better about ourselves, that we know this stuff, we feel competent in that area.
Yeah, well, I want to do the opposite, because the complexity is in the simplicity. So if you can make something, it's like designing a house. You can have all the walls and all the angles and that, but it's much more difficult to design a minimalistic house. And it's the same with all of this training. It's like the simpler you can make it, the better. And actually, most of it is simple. The science and some of the mechanisms behind it is more in depth, and you should understand some of that knowledge behind the skills that you're using, because it amplifies the effect of the skill or the exercise or the thing that you're doing. But actually, mental skill development is easy. Breathing training should be simple. It should be easy to apply into your existing training regime. And yeah, we do over complicate things. I think like some of the best coaches are the ones that, the athletes, example would be the athletes go back in at half time, and it's like, right, what is the most direct message that we can give the player in the simplest way that doesn't create too much cognitive overload?
Yeah, totally agree. This is why I was drawn to your stuff, because the way you describe it is just, I was like, this guy sings from the hymn sheet that I want to be singing from. Just keep it simple. There's no fluff around it. It's just like lie back. If you want to put your legs up on the wall, like, that's fine. Just breathe deeply, inhale, melt away into the ground. Just simple cues, knowing that the everyday person can follow that.
Yeah.
And so,
sorry, we've just I've just finished, and this is a bit of self-promotion, but an online breathing course, and it takes people through, I think, a really cool journey in terms of breathing development, breathing mechanics. So better access to your diaphragm, better diaphragmatic excursion, better mind-body connection with the primary muscles of breathing, dissociating from the accessory muscles, understanding that they have a pivotal role in breathing during that high-intensity workload. And then we have a section on a whole module on breathing to elicit calm. So being able to use that body system to create a calm state in dynamic situations, but also as a daily practice. And then we have a section on dynamic breathing training, which is around, breath hold work, CO2 tolerance training, rate control, under exertion, matching the intensity of your breathing to the intensity of the exercise. it's something I'm real proud of because I've been working in that space for about 8 years, and I've tried all of this stuff, man, and I feel like distilling it down to what actually works is a real skill that has taken me a long time. But I think having that access to elite level athletes and seeing how this stuff works, and then working with them one on one and being able to be like, right, that doesn't work, this does work, and trimming the fat off it, left with a pretty cool course.
Yeah, 100% would look forward to being able to help support you with that. And with those athletes that come to you for all of these modalities that you're teaching them, what are some of the characteristics in them as individuals that you see as commonalities that allows them to walk through that door?
Curiosity. Yeah, no, well, the hallmarks of peak performance: curiosity. They're curious, and I think the problem is for a lot of I got to be careful what I say, but for a lot of athletes who are in team environments where there is a lot of red tape stuff, you come here, you do this, you go there, you do that, and they're surrounded by a team of coaches and physios and all these different people. It can be difficult to then go out and explore something external, and but curiosity, man, it's like, oh, there's this breathing stuff, or it's the awareness, and that's why I love working with the fight athletes, because you go listen to an interview of a fighter versus, I don't know, a football player, or it's a totally different interview. The fighters say whatever they want. There's no,
They're not guarded.
I love that, man. I love the rawness of the sport, and I love that, the breathing stuff all comes from martial arts and yoga, and so they're open to it. What tends to happen in terms of the group sports is I'll go in there, you sort of get boxed into like an hour a week. That's not going to work. This is one of the most important parts of the training, is the mental skill development and the self-awareness and the meditation and the breathing and all this stuff. And so I'll go in there, might run a workshop or something, and then I'll pick up 2 or 3 players who want to work one-on-one because they have that curiosity.
I think that's a land grab, like you said, for team sport, something I've experienced. I came from team sport, and that is a land grab for so many team sport athletes to have that curiosity, to be willing to jump outside of their ecosystem that they're in to go and find something new. I did it a little bit, and for me, it was yoga. It was yoga and meditation, and it wasn't a coincidence that it actually started to enhance my performance. And not only my performance, I think it had an cascading effects of where my life has gone now, but also the well-being of myself. And post-career, just, I always say my yoga and my meditation practice, it didn't make the sledgehammer of losing my career through injury any less harsh, but it just gave me a shield to hold in my hand. And it gave me something. It gave me a cushion that sort of padded the blow. So it didn't change the sledgehammer. It just padded the blow a little bit. And I think I owe those sorts of practices. And it was through the curiosity to come out of what I was doing in the day-to-day. And that's probably really hard now, because even the trainers themselves, the coaches that are in those institutions, they want to, again, feel like they're the ones that are controlling everything. They're the ones that feel like they're making the impact. They're doing the thing that's getting you the performance. And you just might not be the person that's best suited for that athlete. And as that athlete, go and turn over every stone you possibly can before you finish your career, and before you've really wrung everything dry to say, like, yeah, I squeezed every bit of life I could out of what I was doing, and I turned over every stone to get there.
Yeah.
And if that means go and find someone else, so be it.
Yeah, definitely. And the beauty is in collaborating, man. Like, no one has all the answers. I'm a collaboratist. I love collaborating with the right people who are also open-minded. And yeah, I think that's where all the gold happens, is collaborating.
For sure. Dave, this has been unreal, mate. I've loved chatting to you, getting to speak to you. And where is the best place for people to go to follow what you're doing?
Yeah, the Instagram is integrated training, WMW integrated training, or just integrated training. And then, yeah, the website, wmw.co.nz. So yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I've listened to a couple of your podcasts, and I learned a lot, man. And it's stuff that I will take and apply into what I'm doing. Two of the recent ones, I can't remember the name of the people that came on to talk, but I found it very enlightening, and I love getting a different perspective of all this stuff. And sometimes, you get something, you're listening to something that challenges your perspective, and that unlocks your curiosity. And yeah, that's what I love about listening to podcasts. And the two that I listened to from your podcast were just amazing. And I like the way that you guide the conversation, and appreciate what you're doing, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think where I'm trying to head with it is I'm peeking into my own curiosity a little bit more now, and asking myself the questions that I want to get answered and where we're at in life. And hopefully this show can start to point people in the direction. And I was so curious about what you were up to. I think the way you are literally integrating everything that you're doing, whether it's from the practices, but nature. And I also, we didn't really touch on it, but the fact that a lot of the work is with men, I think this is really powerful for men, because I'm not disregarding women in this sense, but I'm saying there is a lot of intensity when it comes to stress for men. Men put a lot of pressures on themselves, regardless of just outside life. And I think more people doing what you're doing in helping them regulate themselves will have a cascading effect, even if it's invisible, but potentially will be viral, the effect on it has on communities.
Yeah, spot on, man. Everyone, there's a, I guess people think that, guys don't want to talk, man. The guys that we get on the workshop, that these are like, builders and tradies, and we get a broad spectrum, and they want to talk, man. And you set up the environment, and they will talk. They will get that stuff off their chest, and that's the goal. It's like sharing, and there's something really powerful about being in a group and listening to other people's stuff, because we're all very similar. Oh, I do that. We're all, they're sitting there going, far out, man. I do all of these things. Oh, we're all quite similar. We're all in the same boat a little bit.
Well, there's an episode I did with Chris Masagno, who's a academic in choking under pressure, and he presented a model called the self-presentation model, and it's essentially this idea that you are presenting a version of yourself to sort of show people that you are performing well under pressure. But I actually thought that works in sport, yes, and that is true, and I've seen that, and you see fighters do that. Like, I'm okay, and they're kind of not really okay, but they're convincing themselves, I'm presenting to the world a version of themselves that isn't the internal experience that they're having. But that is so true with life as well. I think men are doing that all the time. I have done that. I present a version of myself that the internal experience is not the same. But I think the more we can share, tell stories, be around each other, open up, and yes, you can use the word vulnerability and show that, but that's where it doesn't take away and strip you of your strength that you can have as a man when you move away from it. It just allows you to understand yourself, find that balance. Everything we've spoken about today around understand yourself, have that curiosity, the awareness, be mindful, be present, and that will make you a stronger person moving forward.
Yeah, and just one thing, like, you never know what someone's going through. You never know, man. And just recently on this workshop, there was a young fella, and we went around and we shared, and it got to him. He was the last one, and he goes, "Oh, I don't really have anything." I perceive that as that he wasn't engaged, and I sort of hit him up about it and put him on the spot a little bit. And he goes, "Well, actually, I just found out that one of his family members had been diagnosed with cancer." And then he got emotional, and it's like, emotional regulation, and we talk about self-awareness, but it's also being aware that we just don't know what other people. It's that whole thing of like, be kind, and like, don't draw conclusions based on people's behavior, because who knows what they're going through. And that is a real skill, man, because we can often like how, and I thought about that. I thought about how I'd drawn that conclusion, and we draw these conclusions all the time. The reality is we just don't know what people are going through, and be kind.
What a place to finish it. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Wood.
Cheers, mate.
If you enjoyed that episode with Dave and you want to enjoy even more episodes of the podcast, then we've put together a playlist where you can get started right away. All you got to do is click right here. Go on, go.